All right, let's open the door on one of the most important gadgets in your entire home, your refrigerator. But we're not just going to look at what's inside. Nope. We are going to trace its family tree all the way back to something way more personal and, surprisingly simple: your own body. How is that even possible? Well, let's get into it. It's a weird question, right? I mean, one is this complex machine humming away in your kitchen, and the other is, well, it's just a basic thing our bodies do. But what if I told you they both run on the exact same playbook? That to really understand your fridge, you first have to understand why you sweat. You see, long before we ever dreamed of engineering an air conditioner, evolution had already built the ultimate cooling machine. And guess what? You're living inside of it right now. Just think about it for a second. The need to stay cool, to stay comfortable, to stay safe from the heat, that is one of our most fundamental drives. And the very first solution we ever had wasn't built in some factory. It was literally built into our DNA. It's this incredibly sophisticated system that's been perfected over millions of years. And that brings us to the heart of it all, the main mechanism. You can think of it as humanity's very first and probably most important experiment in heat transfer. So how does this natural experiment actually work? It's a really simple four-step process. First, your body's heat load goes up. Maybe you're out in the sun or working out. Your body responds, and your sweat glands release moisture onto your skin. Then, and this is the magic part, that moisture evaporates. It turns from a liquid into a gas. And as it does that, it has to pull heat away from your skin, leaving you feeling cooler. Simple as that. And what's so wild is that this wasn't some conscious discovery. Nobody had to sit down and figure this out. It was just this automatic, physiological thing. Our bodies were basically running countless tiny thermodynamics experiments every single day, teaching us a fundamental law of physics without us even realizing we were in class. Okay, so our bodies were constantly running this cooling program. It was really only a matter of time before our ancestors started noticing that the same principle was at work all around them, not just on their own skin. For example, they saw that water kept in a porous clay pot was always cooler. Why? Because tiny bits of water would seep through and evaporate off the outside. They could feel that a wet rock was colder than a dry one. And of course, they knew that a nice breeze felt amazing when they were sweating because it was speeding up that evaporation. Nature was basically the first laboratory for this stuff. Now, for thousands of years, this was all just intuitive knowledge. Things people just knew from experience. But then science came along and finally gave this incredibly powerful natural phenomenon a name and a formal explanation. And that scientific term is the latent heat of vaporization. Now that sounds super complicated, but it's just a fancy way of describing what our bodies have always known. For any liquid, like sweat on your skin or water on that clay pot, to turn into a gas, it has to suck up a whole bunch of heat energy from whatever it's touching. And this slide, right here, this is the key to the whole thing. That simple, everyday thought, hey, when the water on my skin disappears, I feel cooler, is the exact same concept as that big, complex scientific term. Science didn't invent the idea, it just gave our intuition a really precise label. So here's the point you absolutely have to get. The laws of thermodynamics are powerful, for sure, but they describe things, they don't create them. They're just explaining the rules of a game that nature had already been playing for, well, forever. The principle of cooling existed long, long before anyone wrote down an equation for it. And this is where it all comes full circle. Once that principle was finally understood and had a name, engineers could start to consciously design systems that copy the brilliant natural blueprint our own bodies had been using all along. I mean, seriously, think about what an amazing blueprint our bodies provided. We have a system that automatically regulates its coolant, sweat, based on how hot it is. It even uses airflow to become more efficient. And it's constantly working to maintain a stable, safe temperature. It's basically the perfect model for a cooling system. So your refrigerator, with all its coils and chemical refrigerants, is just a highly advanced mechanical version of you sweating. That's it. It works by forcing a special liquid to evaporate inside that box, which pulls the heat out of the air and away from your food. So you see, refrigeration didn't start in a lab with a bunch of complicated equations. It started right here with the simple, elegant, and ancient process of our own bodies keeping themselves cool. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the blueprint for something as complex as a refrigerator was hiding in our own bodies the whole time, What other incredible secrets of engineering are just sitting out there right in front of us, waiting to be noticed? Thanks for watching.